I've been watching this World War II series with Indy Neidell, and we're right at the point where the U.S. will be entering the war. His current episode here I'm attached this to is the December 5th episode, and we know what happens 2 days later. So if I want to throw out kind of an alternate scenario or alternate history scenario to illustrate what I think that Japan made a really colossal mistake for themselves, and I guess maybe a fortuitous mistake for the world, given how it all ended up. But consider the following idea. I mean, we present in the video several different things of what they might do and the uncertainty the U.S. had about what action was being taken, and also the time frame in which the U.S. was prepared to actually engage the Japanese. Now, so in that scenario, what if the Japanese had simply not attacked Pearl Harbor? After all, let's consider what was gained by attacking Pearl Harbor militarily, and what should be expected. With the shallow water that was in Pearl Harbor, battleships that were not completely destroyed, such as the Arizona was, pretty much could be rehabilitated and put back in service after a period of time. And in fact, only 2 of our battleships there were actually completely taken out of the war. And the rest were eventually repaired and sent back into action to fight, in the island battles that followed up. And we wouldn't have expected a whole lot more, short of like a complete magazine explosion or the one that capsized and they had to cut through the bottom to try to rescue sailors. The rest of them were basically repairable. So other than that, there's more the lighter ships, destroyers and such that were actually destroyed, airplanes on the ground and so forth. They even failed to destroy our fuel supply. And there was always the possibility that we would have managed to ambush them and they've lost several carriers in the process too, if the surprise hadn't been complete. On the other hand, let's look at what it did when you consider the political and psychology of the United States. By launching a surprise attack on a country that did not want war in terms of its civilian population, not to say that the government might not have wanted to go to war, but the people didn't. And there was a substantial neutrality movement in the country at that time, the Charles Lindbergh movement and so forth. So my point is that the United States would have a hard time going to war unless we were actually attacked, which of course we were attacked in what was considered to be and was a very dastardly surprise attack, right? So that gave Roosevelt everything he needed to get a declaration of war and to have a population highly motivated to go to war. Okay, so what would the alternative strategy be? What does Japan really need at that point most critically? Well, they need natural resources, particularly the oil and the Dutch East Indies. And there are other aspects in, I guess, Malaysia they wanted as well. Well, okay, why don't they go right ahead and just sail right by our position in the Philippines, armed up as it was, and go down and take the Dutch East Indies, and if they want to go ahead and take Malaysia, they could take it the same way they did historically, and there'd be nothing the British could really have done to stop it ultimately, and simply ignore what's going on in the Philippines. It's very unlikely we'd have gone to war, and it's very unlikely that our fleet would have sailed from Pearl to have done anything at all, and the Japanese did have a large carrier fleet. Instead of using it to attack Pearl Harbor, why not just position it so that in the event we did sail to try to intervene in the Dutch East Indies operation, they would try to intercept it in the high seas and attack it that way. Perhaps the battleships in that case would not have been sunk in shallow water; they'd have been sunk in the open ocean and totally lost, along with a lot more sailors. So, in other words, it would have been a volitional attack. Was it done on presidential order without a declaration of war from Congress, or would it be a partisan declaration of war with a split Congress? In any event, it looks to me like if that would have occurred, the setback would have been blamed on Roosevelt. Would have been really undermined his position politically. More than likely, though, of course, we'd have done nothing. They'd have got the East Indies, and there'd been no war between the United States and Japan at that moment in time. And that would have given them the ability then to actually utilize the oil that they would be capturing there, rather than having, over time, a lot of the tankers simply being torpedoed or shot up by U.S. aircraft. And so it looks to me like Japan has its cake and sort of eats it too, at least at the moment. And it's unclear to me that actually entering open conflict really would have helped them out